Welcome, everyone, to the Over Under Movies podcast, the show where we take a prominent figure or franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask the simple question, are they overrated or are they underrated? I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, my co-host. He is the Toto to my Dorothy. It's Mr.
Toto.
Dylan DeAngelis.
I praise. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, Toto is the icon off the movie that we're talking about today. And we're joined by a very special guest. It's Miss Hannah Myers. Hello.
Oh, happy to
Hannah,
be here.
tell us about yourself.
Oh my goodness. I am a movie lover first and foremost. And I consider myself newer to the podcast world, but I guess I have been listening properly for probably the last about 3 years, maybe. And I basically started with film podcasts, movie podcasts, and anything I could find. I've loved anything film since I was a little kid, and I grew up with this film specifically. So yeah, can't wait to discuss.
Yeah, so today, if you haven't figured it out yet, we are talking about the classic 1939 MGM production, The Wizard of Oz. It's a classic story. It's part of American history at this point. And yeah, we figured this would be a good time to talk about it as Wicked has just hit theaters and is a smash hit. So Hannah, tell us about your history with this movie, The Wizard of Oz, and what made you want to talk about it with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's easily one of my earliest childhood faves, I would say. And one kind of cool thing, my maternal grandmother, her father, he owned the local movie theater in this tiny little southern town in the 1930s. And she would have been just shy of about 10 years old when this came out. And so it's just so cool that my grandmother and then my mom were both raised on this. And my mother introduced it to me. And yeah, I mean, it was just formative for me, I feel like, in terms of my love for film and even just aesthetically and visually. I just love how gorgeous it is. And then as a theater kid, I discovered Wicked in middle school and just fell in love with that show. And so, of course, was thrilled to hear about the movie. A little apprehensive. We can get to that later, but mostly thrilled. And yeah, that's fresh in my mind. I've got the universe kind of at the forefront of my brain right now, so seemed timely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on something of a Wicked Wizard of Oz kick as well. Dylan, what's your background with this movie?
Yeah, Wizard of Oz is another one of those like TNT TBS movies for me that I feel like it's been on TV so many times that this is a movie that I have seen pieces of a ton of times. However, I rewatched the film earlier today, and I gotta say, I don't know how many times I've watched this movie from start to finish, because it's one of those movies where you might watch like a scene or two and then that's it on your sitting. But yeah, I mean, it's a kid's movie, right? We can agree with that. And it's a movie that I watched a lot when I was a kid growing up. As an adult, I look at the movie a lot differently, and specifically now knowing what happened on the production of the film and the film's legacy and film like history. It's a really interesting one to look back on.
So we can talk a little bit about the production of the film. Dylan, I know you wanted to touch on this. We were just talking about this earlier today. For as beautiful, almost seamless as this film looks, there was a lot of trouble on the production of this set. Is that right?
Yeah. This movie is an absolute mess to make.
Yep,
People that worked on this film said that it was potentially cursed. And I would say that it probably wasn't cursed. It was probably just that movies as a medium were not particularly very old in 1939. They're still learning how to make them. Yeah. I'm not going to go through every last little detail. You can look it up online or like on YouTube. You can watch compilations of all of the specific injuries and incidents that happened when making this movie. One interesting one I'd like to point out, because it will enhance anybody that's listening to this and you want to go back and listen to Wizard of Oz. The actress that plays the Wicked Witch of the West, and she also plays the angry old lady at the beginning of the movie that tries to take the dog. The actress's name is Margaret Hamilton, and there is a scene early in the film when Dorothy first enters Oz where the Wicked Witch of the West shows up in a cloud of red smoke. And it's all done in camera, obviously. There's no, there are quote unquote special effects in this movie, but everything's done in camera. And so how does she appear out of a cloud of black smoke? How do they do it? Well, it's just how you would do it in a a theater production, there's a trap door, and throughout the rest of that scene, you can clearly see the square on the ground where the trap door is,
Yes.
and it goes off pretty seamlessly when she shows up. However, when she exits, she also leaves in a cloud of smoke. But there's a fireball that happens right after the smoke, and it happens alarmingly quickly. Like it's
Yeah.
like simultaneous. How did she get out of the way of the fire that quickly? Well, spoilers: she did not get out of the way of the fire. She was severely burned and was hospitalized for about 6 weeks, despite
That's
the production wanting her to come back on set like the next day, I think. And specifically, one of her hands got like significantly burned to the point where she had like nerve damage the rest of her life on her one hand.
Yeah.
So much so that they couldn't paint over that hand because she's painted green. And if you look through the movie, there are some scenes where she is wearing a green glove on one of her hands. Her hand is
Ah.
not painted. She has a glove on that hand. And those will be the scenes that she shot after she got like horrifically burned on the set of this movie. So it's just one of the story. There's a bunch of stories like that in the making of this movie. The Tin Man, the actor that plays the Tin Man, is not the first actor that played the Tin Man. The guy that was playing the Tin Man originally, they painted his face with like liquid aluminum paint, which he inhaled and almost died. Basically, he went into like anaphylactic shock, and he was also hospitalized. He was also asked to return to set, and he said, "No, I'm in the hospital dying." So they recast him. So the Tin Man we see in this movie is the second guy that they had playing the Tin Man. The guy that they replaced him with also had problems with the paint on set, and he had like he developed like an eye infection from the paint, I think, something
Oh
like
my
that.
God.
It's
That's
crazy.
awful.
Everybody got injured making this movie. That's not to mention like what this film did to Judy Garland. It like
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
ruined her life a little bit, despite the fact she's 16 in this movie.
Yeah, they put her on
Yeah.
uppers and downers and like diet pills. They wanted her to be skinnier. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
basically the director, at least like reportedly, was just like always calling her fat. The entire production was like, Judy Garland, you're too fat. You look fat.
She
You're supposed to be a little girl in this movie.
They had to bind her chest, I know, and I mean, not just on this film, but just in her early career and then continuing throughout. She was just screwed by the system. I mean, right from the get-go, everyone around her was just cutting her down, and this certainly did not help with that. Good
Judy
lord.
Garland also was she was the she had the second lowest salary of any of the main cast in this film.
Wow.
You know who was the only cast member that had a lower salary than her?
Toto.
It's not a joke. It's Toto.
No.
Toto got paid less than Judy Garland. Everybody else got paid more.
That's crazy.
That's
That's
so rough. Oh my god.
that's really rough because she was kind of already a superstar. Like she was contracted with MGM, I'm pretty sure. So like they knew she was like a superstar. So for them to treat her that way, it's just unfathomable.
Yeah, I mean, her sisters were performers. Her parents were both in like the vaudeville scene. I mean, she was an up and comer for sure. And that was the biggest thing that
Yeah.
I noticed on this rewatch specifically is that I think Judy Garland like kind of carries this entire movie. I think that this movie
Yeah.
wouldn't be what it was like without that performance of her as Dorothy. I think the rest of the movie
No.
is kind of like underwhelming a little bit. Like if you just take Dorothy out of it, the rest of the movie is kind of like a fever trip. It feels like somebody did a lot of
True.
drugs and made this movie.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that she's like a standout star, but I also think that every performance is quite memorable. Like the different dance moves from the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, I think they're really cool. The Tin Man does this like leaning move that Michael Jackson does later in his
I
career.
literally wrote that down. I made a note of the MJ
It was
lean.
it's
It's like,
cool,
that's
right?
incredible.
Like
Yeah.
that was like 30, 40 years before Michael Jackson made that move famous. Yeah, just the way these performers as the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man moved, the physicality I thought was really brilliant. Um, it's something that plays really well on stage, but I think they brought it to screen in a very good, like cinematic way.
Yeah, and you'll have to tell me, Jason, because like I know obviously we're doing this because Wicked is in theaters, and Wicked is was Wicked a book first and then a stage
Mhm.
musical? Was
Yes.
Wizard of Oz ever a theater production before it was a movie?
Yes, but not
Yes.
with this music.
Yeah.
So
It was just a straight play, right?
yeah, there was like multiple productions of this before this came out. So there was plays, musical theater, other film versions of this. it seems like, and I'm not really sure how this was working, but it seems like L. Frank Baum's Wizard of Oz book series just went into public domain very quickly, or he was able to just sell the rights willy nilly to
Mm.
a bunch of people, because people started adapting it very quickly after he wrote it, and there was a whole bunch of them even before this movie came out.
We see that quite a bit from films that we talk about in this podcast, where it'll be like the movie came out in 1985, but the book was written in 1982. How'd that happen? And it's like, oh, they sold the rights like
Yeah.
immediately.
A lot of books
Capitalized.
now, they get movie deals before they are published. I think even like Jurassic Park, I think they sold the movie rights to that for over $1 million before the book even came out, because they knew that Michael Crichton
Yeah.
was, yeah, the guy. He had the sauce. Yeah, my favorite injury story from the set. Well, first of all, and I know we don't want to go through all of these, but the Wicked Witch's stunt double also suffered burns
Yeah,
when she was doing the
that's the
skywriting.
craziest story. Is that there are multiple fire-based incidents in this movie. Anytime you see fire in this film, just know that something bad happened on set that day.
Somebody
And
got
then
hurt.
we
God.
talked about the Tin Man already, but Toto also got a grievous injury on this set where
Oh
he
my
was
god, not Toto.
offset for 6 weeks. Yeah, Winky stepped on him,
Oh.
and then he was injured.
God damn it, Winky.
Oh
Oh
yeah, part of
no.
my background with this movie is that I played a Winky in the our high school stage production of The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I didn't know our high school did Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
That's
so I would go around going oh, oh. But then also, if you look at like the Wikipedia page here, there's a section for cut songs in The Wizard of Oz. Well, the Winkies don't have a
Oh,
song, so to make the extras happy, they add a song back in for the Winkies. I don't remember how it goes, but I know that I was in it.
love it. It's part of you.
Hannah, do you have a favorite injury story from The Wizard of Oz?
Oh God. No, I won't say a favorite. I mean, I've heard about all the pyrotechnic nonsense. And I mean, I've known a little about Judy Garland for a while. Not as much as I would like to actually, but no, just you guys have already covered the best of the
Mhm.
worst.
Yeah, I mean,
Best,
we can talk about
probably.
the poppy scene where they have the fake snow falling on them to put them to sleep. The fake snow is asbestos flakes,
That's
which in the
crazy.
Yeah.
1930s they knew
Love
asbestos was
it.
dangerous, but they were using it as fake snow anyway because it just looked good on camera, I guess.
Of
And
course.
to be frank, it did look good. I felt teleported. Was it worth it?
Oh my gosh, I made a note about that I as a kid, for some reason, I knew it was snow, but I never registered that as snow. It looked like powdered sugar on baked goods or something. I
Mhm.
thought, "Oh, it looks so delicious and sweet and soft." Thought, "Ooh,
Y-
nice asbestos."
yeah, there's some real whimsy to that asbestos
Yeah.
that I think plays really well on screen.
Another
Mhm.
crazy fun fact that I love is the Cowardly Lion's costume is made of actual lion hair
I like that too. Yeah.
because this was just before the time that they could make fake hair. So it's actual
Oh.
lion fur that they have him like covered in. I know his costume and the Scarecrow's costume, both of them had like breathability issues, and both of those actors were
Mhm.
just like sweating like crazy on the set because of the lights. I guess I don't know. We could talk about it now that this is one of the first movies that really like made Technicolor a big thing.
Hmm.
For
Yeah.
anybody listening to this pod, this is not the first movie to ever have color in it. This is not the first movie to ever
Oh,
have Technicolor in it, which is like the type of coloration that they use in the film. It's just that the black and white transitioning to the color is very iconic, and that's what people think of it as. But the Technicolor
mhm.
lights, and that's something I really noticed on this rewatch. Holy crap, is this movie colorful? It's like more
It's
colorful than movies now.
the vibrancy, like, just oh my gosh, it's, like, beyond candy colored. Oh, yeah, I love that. As someone who loves color, it's just beautiful.
And they do a really good job with the cinematography to make those colors pop. I was talking to one of my friends about Wicked, which has been getting kind of some criticism about its
Yeah,
cinematography,
hilariously, Wicked has the opposite problem.
its lighting, and
Yeah.
its lack of color allegedly. And I was telling my friend I think it has a lot of color, and then he was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, but you can see in the lighting that there's no like there's not enough like blacks, there's not enough contrasts to actually make the colors stand out, so they kind of just blur together even when there is a lot of color on the
Mm.
screen. It's not something that I particularly have an eye for, but when you compare Wicked to The Wizard of Oz, you can see like, oh, this is like a world of difference, even if they both do have a lot of color in this specific shot or whatnot. So yeah,
Yeah.
just like what they were able to do technically on this film is just so impressive.
Yeah, especially the 4K remaster that's on HBO Max. It's really good quality. You really see the details.
That's what I
Um,
just watched literally a
yeah,
few hours ago, and I
yeah, and it
just
is funny.
yeah,
So
my
the
eyes.
the two things that I was really looking for on this rewatch was one, I was curious how much the camera was going to move because the film is kind of it's kind of shot a little bit as if they're making a movie version of a stage play
Yeah.
Mm.
where there's a lot of lockdown shots, and when there are dialogue sequences they're not doing a lot of like shot reverse shot. It's just like a static camera angle as if you were watching this happen on stage. And a lot of like the big like panning shots, you don't see them until she gets to Oz, and then like once she gets to Oz, that's when you see the dolly shots, that's when you see like crane shots, and you see those like giant sets, which is hilarious because you can see the edge of the sets at all times. Like they don't give
Mm.
a shit that it's just like mats in the background with like winding hills and the yellow brick road. It's something you don't
Yeah.
notice at all when you're a kid, and you only might notice it now because I just said something on this podcast. But it goes back to like the lighting and the set design. It's really like well put together for a movie that it was apparently absolute chaos on the set.
Yeah.
It's you definitely can tell this was like of the soundstage era, and like on the MGM lot is where they filmed everything. I do think they do a great job teleporting you to the world of Oz, but at the same time you're never like, oh, they shot this on location. It's not like you're watching Lord of the
Teleporting you
Rings.
to the farm in Kansas also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all soundstage too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they did a really good job with that because I kind of did think they shot that on
Yeah.
location now that I think about it. What's everyone's favorite song from
Yeah.
this movie?
See, I could more easily pick one from Wicked, I feel like.
Well, what's your favorite song from Wicked?
Oh my gosh. I mean, oh, that is so hard to say though. I mean, I don't want to be that cliche theater girl and just say for good, but it might have to be that just because I mean, I just have so much associated with that. It was such a formative show for me and for a lot of my friends and I have so many different attachments to it, of course, and the nostalgia, you know. But probably either that or what is this feeling? I just
Yeah.
love that song. I love that so much. Ugh,
Okay,
all the
so you
loathing.
like the friendship song and the hating song from the two
I really
characters.
do. That's quite an interesting combo.
Mhm.
But yeah. Oh,
What about you, Dylan? What's your favorite song from this movie?
Well, this film won Best Song at the 12th Academy Awards in
mhm.
1940, and the song that won Best Song is "Over the Rainbow,"
Interesting.
which I would say is probably my favorite. It's a little more like dour of a song, but it's the song that sets up like the entire movie. And I think honestly, like the music. This is gonna sound bad. The music felt a little repetitive to me. They do Off to See the
That's fair.
Wizard of
That's
Oz. They
fair.
do that what, 4 times?
Yeah, and it slaps every time. You're
It's yeah.
wrong.
You can say it slaps every time. You can say it's repetitive and it's okay. That's also an opinion to have.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong that it's repetitive. They do it. Yeah, let's see. It says "You're Off to See the Wizard" is one of the songs, which
Mhm.
is the first instance of "We're Off to See the Wizard." Then "We're Off to See the Wizard." Then "We're Off to See
Scarecrow.
the Wizard" reprise, and then "We're Off
Tin
to See
Man.
the Wizard" reprise too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like 4 of them in total.
Yep. My
Well, I
favorite
had
song
not Oh, go for it, go for
uh,
it.
is "If I Only Had a Brain." Also becomes repetitive because two other characters do it. But I really in the Scarecrows because he's such a dumbass, and I feel like I can really relate to that. And he's like, if I had a brain, he says, I would while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain. Why would you do that? I just love it. It's so the lyrics are so silly, and it gets me every time. And that's the part I probably
Whimsy.
wanted the most in high school, but they made me a Winky. So, yep. What were you gonna
Alas.
say, Hannah?
Oh, just related to that I had not remembered how many of what I thought were separate, unique individual songs were just different lyrics or verses to the same things. Like, of course, I remembered the Scarecrow's intro, but I did not recall that the melody he introduces, I didn't remember that, that continues with the Tin Man and with the lion. I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess
Yeah, it's all kind of the
as a
same
little
song
kid
but
you just."
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here's a
interesting.
fun fact. Do you know in Wicked, how Elphaba often sings the word unlimited? She goes, unlimited. Well, that is a tribute to
Yeah.
Over the Rainbow. So the unlim is the same musical distance away as somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is
Oh,
Stephen, what's his name? Schwartzman
yeah.
putting
Yeah.
in tribute to the original Wizard of Oz.
I love that. And I must admit too, I mean, I know we're covering, the original film and not Wicked, but I have not read the Wicked book. But I know that is also kind of drastically different from the stage show. So I mean, a lot of these adaptations have taken various bits and pieces from the original work, and not all
Hmm.
of them take the same bits and pieces. And I mean, I also must admit I have not read the actual original, works by L. Frank Baum, but yeah, I'd be curious to explore all of the different perspectives that I haven't yet.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I used to have a podcast called Page to Frame where it was specifically like
Mm.
looking at a book and then an adaptation of that book and talking about that. And Wizard of Oz is something that's so ripe for those types of discussions just because there's been so many adaptations. Even like this 1939 movie, the probably the most popular vision of the Wizard of Oz that we have in our heads is pretty different from the book. There's a fourth witch in the book.
Yeah.
Glinda and the Good Witch of the North are two separate characters. The Wicked Witch of
Oh,
the West isn't green in the books. There's just a whole bunch of different stuff. Oh, and Dorothy is not
oh,
dreaming Oz in the books. She just goes there. It's more like
yeah.
Narnia.
I
Listen,
know
that
I have read that they thought audiences at the time wouldn't be able to accept it as just a straight up fantasy as easily as they could accept it being a dream sequence.
Hmm. Yeah, which I think is a little silly, but it like played
Yeah.
out very well. Like people love the ending of Wizard of Oz, and it's iconic, and it gets parodied and homaged all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I should say that that's my favorite interpretation of this movie. I think the best way to look at this film is that she is absolutely dreaming this fantasy land the entire film. You see it in how most of the main characters in Oz are mirror images of real people that she met in real life just prior to getting hit in the head by a window that pops out of the house, and she's just concussed and she's having concussion dreams,
This
and
poor
that's the
girl.
movie, and we don't need to know anything else about this world. When she says, "Oh, it's the Wicked Witch of the West," in your head you go, "Oh, so there must be wicked witches. There must be witches of the other three cardinal directions. So where are
Hmm.
they? One of
Mhm.
them got a house fallen on her. The other one is Glinda. Where's the witch of the South? We gonna meet her? I guess we see her
There's
in
no
the
south.
sequel."
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I like the interpretation of It's a Dream. I prefer like a mix of like the magic and the realism. So I like to think that she was transported to Oz, but like through the power of her dream. I don't know.
Yeah, I
But
know. I understand that in
Yeah.
the canon, Oz is a
Yeah.
real place. I just saying out loud. I've not seen Wicked. I don't know anything about the extended universe of Wizard of Oz. I actually think it kind of takes a little bit away from the novelty of the 1939 film when you start adding in all of this outside canonical information
mhm.
and stuff that happened
Mm.
with these other characters. Like personally, I don't need a backstory of the witches. I think it works very well that there is a good witch that is dressed in all pink and an evil witch that is painted green and has a black robe. As a
Yeah,
kid, that resonates very well.
I definitely
True.
see what you're saying, but I think Wicked is less of like a guy trying to expand the Wizard of Oz and more trying to like subvert it. He wrote it because this was like pre Maleficent. This was before you could make tons of money writing YA novels where a villain is a good guy. Um,
It was
He
pretty
just
multi but when was it what's the history of Wicked? When was it written?
so this is pre-Maleficent the movie, so like that Angelina
The
Jolie
Angelina Jolie
scene.
movie?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this was before
So
people
it's
were
not
like,
pre-Sleeping
Yeah,
Beauty is what you're
no,
saying?
Wicked came out in
because the
like
book
1995,
Okay.
the
So it's a
novel.
fairly recent
yeah,
story and musical.
Yeah, and the musical came
because the
out in the
stage
early
show was like
2000s.
oh two oh.
He wasn't trying to like expand the lore as much as he was just trying to write a story about like what turns someone into a villain, what makes someone break bad, and he chose the Wicked Witch of the West as his subject matter. What were you gonna say, Hannah?
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it's interesting that when I have consumed both of these separately, I think of them as completely different things, even though technically they are in the same universe. And
Hmm.
actually, after the first time I saw Wicked, which would have been, it was like 2006, and a friend took me, and we were both just blown away. It was an incredible gift. And we immediately went home to her house and we watched The Wizard of Oz. And it was kind of weird because we both grew up watching the film and loved it. And, we kind of thought, oh, how cool will it be now that we, have this different perspective or this other fictionalized version of events. And yeah, I didn't feel like I was able to kind of connect them at all, actually.
Hmm.
So they're very distinct in my mind, which is sort of funny, but
Yeah,
very
I
separate.
completely agree with that. Like, I don't really treat Wicked as a prequel to The Wizard of Oz at all. It's not like the Star Wars prequels where you're like, all right, this leads into that original thing that I love so much. These are two distinct, separate things. And this last time I watched Wizard of Oz, I was like, all right, I'll watch this with like the idea that Elphaba, well, that this name, that Wish's name is Elphaba, and she has this whole
Yeah.
backstory. I was
What's
like,
her name?
Elphaba, and I was like,
Elphaba.
I'm getting nothing from
Pretty
this.
cool.
I prefer to just keep this as a
Is
separate thing.
is she
Right?
like an
I was like,
alien? What is that name?
Elphaba is
wow.
the
You want to know? Yeah.
initials of L. Frank Baum, the guy who wrote Wizard of Oz. So she's
Oh,
named after the original author.
very very creative.
Yeah, it's a cool
Yeah,
name.
it's like isn't it Jeffrey Maguire? Yeah, yeah,
Gregory.
yeah, or Gregory, excuse me, Gregory Maguire. Yeah, he wanted to pay homage to the original author somehow. And I was just listening to a clip of him a few days ago talking about how he tried all these different iterations of pronouncing the initials, and all of them just sounded horrible. And he chose Elphaba because it kind of sounded like a name, but it wasn't particularly pretty, which he wanted specifically.
Mm,
It's like you'll remember it. It sounds kind of like a name, but it's not some gorgeous thing. It's like a little bit odd, a little alien, as you said.
yeah. And I do
Yeah.
think it's a great name. And I think maybe the one thing where I will kind of tie Wicked into this is like I might just call the Wicked Witch Elphaba if I'm just talking about her, regardless of
Me
what
too.
version it is. Sometimes I
It's easier.
accidentally call her Elsa, which is just another Idina Menzel character, but
I was gonna
that's
say
just
because we
because I'm
see we
dumb.
see her die in this movie. She gets melted. She
Yes,
has the
but
same weakness as the aliens from Signs.
yeah, but
Oh,
it plays out
dang.
different in Wicked.
Here's the question we got to ask about the security measures at Elphaba's castle. If you have one weakness, why are you keeping that one weakness in a bucket in close proximity to your prisoners?
You know, people have been
Can
asking
we
this
talk about
question since 39.
can we talk about how fast that went down? Because of course, I mean, I remember how it all ends with her. I remember how she's done in, but I could not believe it was just like a split second. It just, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, oh, okay, there's the water and she's gone.
Yeah. Another scene with a great trapdoor that you really
Yes.
notice the trapdoor because her robe is clearly like glued. The fringes of her are clearly glued to the floor, so it
Yes.
can't move.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
the robe starts
Yes.
sinking into the floor because the trapdoor is open,
yeah.
and they just hard cut. They hard cut from it.
Oh,
I
I
guess that
love it
means
though.
that she just never showered her entire life,
Yes.
or got caught in a
Um,
rainstorm, or
Or
anything
she
like
could
that. Does
be
it rain
like
in Oz?
she could be
bath.
like Shrek, where you know how
She
when
could be like
Shrek
Shrek.
showers, he just pours mud on himself.
This is something specifically
They're both
to
green.
Yeah,
green characters.
green people don't use water.
They're verdigris.
Yeah.
Chlorophyll, poison
You got
ivy,
Shrek on
everyone.
the mind right now, huh, Jason?
Yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
for Hannah and for all our listeners, I currently work at the Universal Sphere, which is an attraction where we're currently playing Shrek's Festive Flight, which is a
Oh,
short film where Shrek
Oh
takes you on
man,
a journey from Philadelphia to the North Pole. We're open every day from 10 to 8 p.m. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend. Bring your family, bring
I'm
your
gonna go see it
kids.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
oh my God. Y'all, everybody listening, go do that because I cannot. I am not local enough. I am in Minnesota. Otherwise, I would show up.
yeah,
That
it's
sounds
it's pretty
awesome.
cool. And we just had our big Wicked event too. I can't go into that, but
Oh,
it's been a fun
oh.
time at work.
Can we spend like 2 minutes talking about the Wicked press tour? I feel like we'd be remiss if we don't
Of course.
mention it. I should
Yes,
note I have not
please.
watched Wicked. I have no intention of watching Wicked. I'm not
Oh my
really much of a
god.
musical person in general, so I'm
Um,
not going to watch the movie. However, I've learned things about this press tour against my will because it's everywhere. What is up with these two women? Why are they? Because listen. I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of press tour like interviews. I follow Rotten Tomatoes and Collider and all those companies that do like junkets. There's something different about this one. It's very dare I say theatrical.
Yeah.
it's very intense.
Yeah, the main thing seems to be that the two stars, the women who play Glinda and Elphaba, are always like holding hands and on the verge of tears.
Holding
Through-
fingers.
Yeah,
Mhm.
throughout the entirety of this press tour, they are really emotional the whole time. And then the one that's been memed the most is
Mhm.
this reporter says, "Did you know that people I've seen online people are really holding space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity." And these women are like, "Oh, I didn't know that." That's so incredible to hear. Even though holding space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity are words that don't mean anything when strung together in that
Is that
way.
English? Is that something that Chat GPT spat out?
It kind of feels like it.
Well,
Also, from
it's
what I heard
20
about that
years old.
woman,
Like this isn't a new song.
Yeah,
yeah,
and yeah.
the woman that asked the interview question, apparently she was referencing like posts or something online that she saw, which turned out not to be true. And the
Yeah.
things that she said that she was hearing about it was like two conversations she had with friends. This is things that her friends said to her.
Yeah.
A
I
couple
believe that
things.
maybe one person in the world said the phrase, "I've been holding space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity." I don't think that's a commonplace thing. And like, listen, I saw Wicked and I was like, I love Defying Gravity. I am going to listen to this song a lot. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to sing it out loud to myself sometimes. I had no point was I like, I'm going to hold space for these lyrics because that doesn't make sense.
No, no.
And this
It's
is
so
just like
goofy.
personally, it's a major ick for me. Okay, I did drama club for a little over a year when I was in college. It's something that I witnessed firsthand. The thing about theater kids, and when there's a
Watch
lot of
it.
theater kids in this
Yeah.
movie. Clearly, sometimes not all of them, but a not insignificant portion of them have an issue where they cannot quote unquote turn it off. They're just always on. They are always performing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm noticing from this press junket is that these two actresses, I'm going to assume this is just like them actually being this way intentionally, and it's not due to the fact that they're like malnourished or something like that. And this is a side effect of that.
Yeah. I would say it's a mix of
They're
both.
insanely skinny.
They are both really skinny, and I bet they are really hungry and tired on this press tour. And then at the same time, the producers are probably like giving them money and being like, okay, go out there and produce an emotional moment that can go viral. So that's their job, is to
Mhm,
be on and to do that. And it's the same with this woman who's asking them questions. You want them
mhm.
to do something where they'll cry and hold hands, and then everyone will watch and be like, oh my god, I'm so emotional now. Except it didn't quite play out that way.
It's funny that for anybody that is not particularly interested in the film, it's just a meme. And for people that are like really like locked in, for the people that Jason we talked about is this is kind of like Avengers Endgame
For
for
theater
music
kids.
theater kids. And for
See,
those
yeah, I don't
people,
know that, so that checks out.
for
Yep.
those people, these press junkets are like it's like seeing Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth like all together, and they're getting super emotional and holding space for
Mhm.
each other.
Holding
Yeah,
space.
I saw I saw this video that contrasted Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo's interviews with the ones that the male characters are doing, or the male actors from Wicked are doing. So that's Jonathan
Mhm.
Bailey and then Jeff Goldblum. So it cuts from like Ariana and Cynthia holding hands, holding fingers, and like tearing up. And then the press tour that these other guys are on, it just cuts to them going, woo, 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 and that's all they're doing the whole time. And it's so funny. They're just on completely
Just
different
goofing off.
tours.
What
Yeah.
what I will say, I just wanna add, just not even because I am some super fan. Listen, don't get me wrong. I am very new to Ariana Grande. One of my best friends just loves her. He's kind of introduced me to her over the last few years. And I do enjoy some of her music, but I don't know all that much of her. And I also there is some of her stuff I don't enjoy. And I went into this being really, really skeptical, and I was starting to see some of the press, and I thought, I don't know how this is going to be. I don't know if these people got the vibe right. And I mean, I feel like she did a fabulous job in the movie itself. But what I will just say, even though the press stuff is kind of ridiculous, in this kind of show, at least in a theatrical production where the two main characters, I mean, they are the two leads. It is Elphaba and Galinda. And I mean, of course, there are other characters, but at the core, it is about this relationship and this friendship. And this is not a happy show. It's not what my old drama teacher would call a fluffer nutter, where it's just like fun, happy go lucky. And I mean, the bond that they have created over this, I can only imagine how deep that is, even if they are acting a little cringe about it, because I
Mhm.
know what you mean as well. I definitely know those types. But I when I watch some of that, the less kind of eye-rolling moments, it really just seems to me like they have found a really incredible relationship that they, never had before, through doing this, and that's what I hope anyway. So, I just wanna put that out there too.
Getting back to Wizard of Oz, so
Of
Wicked
course.
was written in like the 90s, you said, right? So
Mhm.
like when Glinda sees the Wicked Witch of the West and Wizard of Oz, they just look like two people that they ain't friends, and they know each other a little bit, but there's no deeper backstory between these two witches. It seems like
Right. In the original, yeah, they're just witches of the different quadrants, and that's all you need to know.
they got their turf.
And north and
Yeah.
south are good, and east and west are bad. And that's it.
Yep.
Yep. So this
Mhm.
movie, I mean, talking about these press tours, one thing I wish is like, I wish we had press junkets where we could watch Judy Garland interacting with her co-stars. I really want to know like how everyone got on that set. I know that Judy Garland and actually it was Margaret Hamilton who played the Wicked Witch. I know that they famously had a very deep friendship, and that Judy
Yes.
Garland and Toto had a very deep friendship. I
So
haven't
his name's
heard
Terry the
yet,
dog.
but he was
Aw.
renamed Toto later in his life.
She is a female dog.
Oh, she.
Aw.
You're right. You're
Sweet
right.
girl.
Um, but yeah, I would love to know if like if the Scarecrow and the Lion and the Tin Man all broed out, or like if they were protective of Judy Garland on set, stuff like that. But that's all
What I
lost to
have
time.
read what I've read about the 3 of them is that they kinda wanted nothing to do with her and were just generally sort of dismissive, outside of, what they had to do acting, they did not try to get to know her or welcome her or anything like that, and kind of from the get-go, it was Margaret Hamilton. Yeah,
Yeah.
the witch.
Yeah, that's very
Wild.
interesting. I mean, I'm
So sad.
sure everyone was stressed and unhappy making this film, but it created such like memorable art. It's yeah, it's one of those things where you almost want to separate like the production from the output just because of how good it is.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a movie that I think, knowing all the things that happened during the production of this film, I think it hurts it a little bit. I think it loses a little bit of that luster that you get like when you watch it as a kid, and when you learn that the production of this film like was kind of the kickstart to all of the problems that Judy Garland had in her life. Judy Garland died when she was 47, but like learning all that stuff, when you see her as this like happy, cheerful, little girl singing, and knowing that like she was going through some shit on that set. This is 1939. I'm guessing far less progressive times, far less feminist times.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
yeah.
tough, yeah, real tough look.
Yeah, it is such a shame to like know that a movie that's so beautiful and uplifting had so much like drama going on behind it. And not just drama, like some of the stuff you could call like negligence and abuse, which is very
Yes.
unfortunate.
Well, one thing I wonder about too, I only more recently learned, I don't know how I missed this being a fan of both of these movies. I did not realize that the director of The Wizard of Oz was also the director of Gone with the Wind.
Hmm.
And he did those films the same year. And it just, I mean, yes, film was obviously still in its pretty early days, but the scale of both of those is just wild, and it just makes me wonder, I mean, how thinly stretched was this man? What was he like? And yeah,
Yeah.
that blew my mind a little bit. Wild.
Yeah, I think he was at the time just kind of like a studio man where like if you just had a movie and you wanted
Oh,
it to be done competently and to the letter, you get this guy. I don't think he was considered an auteur at the time. But then putting out Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind in the same year definitely
it's
like
insane.
puts you in the all-timer category. I was
Yeah.
telling Dylan this earlier, like right before we started recording, but originally The
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz had a different director,
Mm.
but he had to leave the production before it could start because he was supposed to direct Gone with the Wind. And then he went and he started directing Gone with the Wind, and then he got fired from that set. And the guy who replaced him on Wizard of Oz replaced him on Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, we can do a whole separate pod on the production of Gone with the Wind. Also not great.
That's wild. That's wild. Oh yeah, that's a whole mess. Ah, yeah, that's some convoluted stuff. Jeez.
All right, I think we can get
Yeah, it is
into
too bad.
yeah, yeah, it is. We can get into the reception of this movie now. So, let's see. What were people saying at the time? Well, The Wizard of Oz received universal acclaim upon its release. Now, that's interesting because a lot of times we'll review movies or we'll talk about movies on this podcast, and especially older ones, they get like mixed reviews and then they become cult classics or they're appreciated later. This movie, no, everyone loved it the second it came out. It currently has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is one of the highest scores you can get. It's got 4 stars on Letterboxd, which is a little low in my opinion. That's the only surprise to me. But yeah, from
Mm.
like its its origins to now, this movie has a lot of love. Dylan, do you know what awards this won or was nominated for?
It was nominated for several awards. Interestingly enough, I don't think it was nominated for any like acting categories. I know Judy Garland got this like honorary award for Academy Juvenile Award because she was in several movies and was under 18, so they gave her an honorary award. Wizard of Oz was nominated for Best Art Direction, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Best Special Effects, and Outstanding Production. So it's nominated for 5. It won 2 of those 5 awards. Now, we should note that, this came out the same year as Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind is considered one of the greatest movies of all time. So very, very tough look for Wizard of Oz that it was stuck in the same year as Gone with the Wind. There's a good chance that it would have had a lot
Yeah.
more awards in hindsight.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
will note it's crazy that it didn't win Best Special Effects. All those people got lit
Yeah.
on fire for nothing.
yeah. Let's see who won that year.
It was a movie that I did not recognize.
Uh,
It's called The Rains Came, which I have no idea
Mm.
what that movie's about.
all right. Well, we'll
Mm.
have to watch
Yeah.
it and see.
Critique their effects.
Exactly. So, this movie is also on quite a few top 100 of all times lists. American Film Institute, AFI, puts out a lot of these lists. It's the number 6 on their 100 Years, 100 Movies list. So, the sixth
Mhm.
best movie of all time, according to that. Over the Rainbow is their 100 Years, 100 Songs number 1 song. And they also have Ding Dong, The Witch is Dead is on there at number 82. It's number 3 on AFI's greatest movie musicals list, and then number
Mm.
1 on their fantasy list. So this
Wow.
thing's legacy really endures, and it makes like obviously AFI is this prestigious institute, whatever, but Wizard of Oz, if you go to many like lists of greatest films of all time, this is always on there. So really that's the thing I guess we'll be debating in our over under arguments.
I have confidence in you.
Okay, so the argument for The Wizard of Oz being overrated And this is overrated in the sense that the conventional rating from everybody is that this is very high, very highly rated. Jason, you just said that their 100 year AFI's 100 years, 100 movies had this the number 6 film of all time. Is Wizard of Oz the number 6 film ever made? I would say no. I say it's a good movie. It is a very good children's film, and it is a film that the best aspect about it is its timelessness. It's a movie that has aged very, very well, considering it's what 85 years old at this point. It's
Hmm.
crazy. It's crazy that people are still talking about a film that was made in 1939 now. That being said, if you get into the weeds about the movie itself, I don't know if we haven't talked about the plot of this film like at all this entire podcast. The plot of the film is it's clearly designed for children. It's very basic. There is not a lot of depth to what is happening. Dorothy goes off to Oz. She meets a bunch of munchkins. They sing a song, and then she meets a scarecrow, and they sing a song, and then she meets a tin man, and they sing a song. Meets Cowardly Lion, and they sing a song, and then they go to the Emerald City, and they sing a song. Like it's the movie. That's the whole movie, and it's clearly a film designed for children, which is fine. It's totally fine. That being said, I don't know how I feel about a movie like this being as highly rated as something like Gone with the Wind, which has a lot of depth to it, a lot of adult themes. I think that a lot of the elements of this film that have really carried it over the years, things like, wow, this is the first movie that really like brought color to the forefront. It might not have been like literally the first film in color, but it's the first film that people remember as like a big color film. Is the movie that kickstarted Judy Garland's life, even though the production of this film kind of ruined her life in some aspects. It's a movie that a lot of people saw when they were kids, and it's just like continued on through to now for 85 years, which is very impressive. However, like in the aggregate, we didn't talk about the box office for this film. This movie did not make its budget back in its initial box office run. This is a movie that has been re-released a lot, and if you look on Wikipedia, it says it's made $30 million over the course. That's over the course of all of its releases. Its original budget was $2.8 million, which was the largest budget ever for an MGM film. It did not make that back. It's a movie that had really good critical acclaim at the time, but it's a movie that it was I would say at a time it was a cult classic. You can't call it a cult classic. You can't call Wizard of Oz a cult classic anymore. It's too mainstream.
Hmm.
But it's kind of a film that kind of had to like work its way up into becoming the film that it is today. And oftentimes, Jason, we talk about these like older films that you can kind of lean a little bit on what they inspire in future films. I think Wizard of Oz is kind of like a relic of its time a little bit. It's clearly like a vaudeville musical type production,
Hmm.
and that kind of went away after the 1930s and 40s. We don't really like see musicals in that style anymore. So the fact that, yeah, I mean, the movie is very good for what it had to work with. I would also say that the production issues that we talked about kind of knocks it down a peg a little bit. You can kind of, I guess, like bury your head in the sand and ignore those issues. But when you have several, like you have to count on multiple hands the number of actors who are emotionally and physically scarred for life making this movie is fucking Wizard of Oz. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that when
Yeah.
you look on top 10 lists of the most dangerous movie sets of all time, and you're like, oh, it's The
Up there.
Crow, it's Twilight Zone the movie, and it's Wizard of Oz.
Good
What?
lord.
Victor Fleming kept all these people alive, at least,
That's
at the
true.
very least.
In Victor Fleming's defense, nobody died making this movie, despite his best efforts.
Yeah.
Why is that art? Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about like movie fatalities once in a while on here because it just happens sometimes. And this one,
Listen to our Crow
Yeah.
episode. It's great.
I'll
I
just
shall.
I'll try and refute some of Dylan's points, and then I'll throw it over to you, Hannah. So let's see,
Take your time.
Dylan. First of all, musical movies did have an extended life, largely thanks to this film. The two movies that are higher on AFI's list, Singing in the Rain, came out in 1952, which is 13 years after this, and then West Side Story came out in 1960, which is over 20 years after this. And then Sound of Music came out in 65, Cabaret 72. Lots and lots of classic movie musicals are not of this era. They are inspired by this movie and some of the techniques that they used here, and that informed the movie musicals that we see from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and all of those inspire all the classic 90s Disney animated films that we all grew up on, the three of us. I think this movie's influence on cinema is fairly undeniable. You talked about the basicness of the plot and how she just meets people and they sing. I'll say to you, is this so different than the JRPGs that we play, where you're just collecting a party to do combat?
JRPGs that you play.
To do combat against monsters? Is it so different from your Final Fantasy VII and your Final Fantasy VII remake? No, except they're singing, which makes it better than those things.
That's
Amen.
arguable.
Amen.
Yeah.
I
Thank you,
second that.
Hannah. Those were the two main points I wanted to refute. I'm going to
Yeah.
throw it over to Hannah
Wait, so,
now.
so you're saying that Wizard of Oz like inspired all movie musicals?
I would say that The Wizard of Oz is one of the oldest movies on this list of the top 25 greatest movie musicals of all time. This one might have been the first musical in color on this list. A lot of the techniques and stuff that they did here were inspirations for all of these. And it was a proving ground that movie musicals could be released as blockbusters, or the equivalent of old-timey blockbusters. And even if it didn't make its money back on its initial run, they sold the television rights like the same year that it came out for like $1 million or something. Like, it made its money back fairly quickly after it left theaters.
Wow.
Yeah, because interestingly enough, there's no sequel to this, right? No direct sequel.
There is one direct sequel to this.
Oh.
It's a Disney. It
Oh,
might not
shit.
be Disney, but it is.
Pull it up.
There's one official sequel. It's called Return to Oz. I think it's animated.
Oh. It's
There's
not.
there's
That's
several
not the
films that are
one.
called Return to Oz,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
only one of them's an official sequel. And what makes it an official sequel, well, is that one, I think it was an MGM release. Let me see if I can pull up information about it. But two, I believe Liza Minnelli voiced Dorothy in this
Oh
sequel movie.
wow.
I could be
That's
wrong.
For anybody listening at home, Liza Minnelli is Judy Garland's daughter.
The one and
So,
only.
very good
My
casting.
apologies. It's called Journey Back to Oz.
Oh. I've heard
Yeah.
of this, but I have not seen this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this one is a direct sequel. Yeah, didn't do well.
Wizard of Oz 2 Tokyo Drift.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So
Yeah.
Hannah, what do you got? Why is Wizard of Oz underrated?
Well, it's a good question because I mean, for a while leading up to this, I've been kind of waffling between which side I would take because I I watched this a lot as a child. I always really loved it. I don't know if I could say it was, say, like a top favorite. Like it was one that I definitely watched a lot. But I feel like as I got older, I didn't see it as much. And coming back to it as an adult, I was a little bit worried actually. I kind of thought, "Oh, I don't know how this is going to hold up, or I don't know, yeah, it's how my perspective is going to be different having not seen it in, probably at least 15 years or so. I mean, it's been a while. And I was very impressed at how modern it seemed alongside all the little dated things. And I mean, I love old movies. I love anything, having to do with cinema history, film history, going all the way back to, Georges Méliès, the 1890s, blah, blah, blah. And this movie just feels so modern in so many ways, and I don't know how much of that is just my own nostalgia maybe coloring that, and how much of it was the fact that this was a huge deal. This was, an innovation in so many ways, and everything from the color to the cast. I mean, the casting, even though they didn't treat them right, the people they managed to acquire, the sets. I mean, yeah, that just always kind of surprises me. But yeah, I don't know. I was just surprised that it didn't feel like some kind of dusty old movie or
Yeah,
something just for kids. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the second movie that we've done on the pod that we've talked about having this like weird timeless longevity to it. The other one was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which is also a very old movie at this point.
Oh my God.
Go
Oh my
ahead.
God. Listen, I had something in my notes that was one of the first things that struck me watching it. I was like, why do I keep thinking about Willy Wonka? And yeah, not the Johnny Depp nonsense. No, no, no. The Gene Wilder, the 70s movie. I grew up on that, and it's the same sort of vibe almost. It's like those sound stages, but the whimsy of it, and there's something with the flavors. I love that you just brought
It's
that up. I've been
yeah,
thinking about that
it's
the whole
practical
time.
sets that are very very fantastical and very colorful, and they're like
Yes.
unrealistically colorful. That's the idea.
Yes.
And for some reason that like sticks in the back of your brain. It's like one of those like core memories from Inside Out. Like you just remember seeing those sets when you were a kid.
Mhm,
Yes. These, like, deep sensory memories, like, I mean, it's
mhm.
like you can smell it even if you're not, you can't, or even if you weren't physically there, it's like, "Oh, I can feel it." Yeah. Oh, so cool.
Yeah, you can smell the
Mm.
asbestos.
Delicious.
Yeah, I gotta
Mm.
imagine that when they were making Charlie or no, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, when they do that scene where they go to that room where everything's eatable, that must have been like directly inspired by the transition to the color in Wizard of Oz because it's supposed to be, it's also vibrant. It's like a reveal because don't they step out through that like door that's like in the small room? I don't remember, but like the reveal is similar. I think they're opening the doorway and then you see the set and it's this vibrant technicolor that really harkens back to like what we see in Wizard of Oz. So that's another
Yeah.
movie musical directly inspired by this that I think came out way later. I think that one's in like the 70s. One thing I want to add is that this movie is a lot funnier than I remembered. I think there's some real
Amen.
bangers in this, and then there's some timeless bangers too. The Scarecrow saying, "Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?" So true. I think that's something that
Yep.
like are going to laugh at that line for like the next 300 years or until the end of time, really, and they're going to think about
Yeah.
whoever's in office at the moment as that person. Yeah,
True.
yeah, it's just I really had a good time rewatching this movie, and I know I had a good time growing up with this movie. So
Yeah. Like I don't know if like I'll ever like rewatch this film again after seeing it like on the pod. This is not like a movie like I watched like during the holidays or anything
wow,
like that. I'm sure people that are like fans like Wicked and stuff, they'll like rewatch this.
yeah,
But this does feel like it kind of it fills that niche as like a children's movie. It's a movie that you see when you're a kid like on TV, and you're like, oh, I guess
Mhm.
I'll watch this. It's on TV.
Mhm.
I am excited to introduce my friends' kids to it now that some of my friends are having some little kiddos. I confirmed on my rewatch, like, yeah, oh yeah, I'll pass this down. We can
Yeah.
continue introducing new generations to this.
I had I told Dylan this already, but one of my bosses at work was like grumbling about how much he hates musicals. And then I was
Mm.
like, "What are you talking about? How do you hate musicals?" And he was like, "I saw a musical once and I didn't like it." And then the musical he saw was Cats. And I was like, "Okay, that's a bad
Oh,
example of the
that's a
only
bad
musical you
introductory
can see."
musical.
And he was like, "Yeah, but I know I'm not gonna." We were showing Wicked at work because I work for Comcast, which owns Universal, and so he had to work this
Oh.
event where he had to sit and watch Wicked and get paid money for it. And he was like whining about it or grumbling. I'll use a more masculine word in case he listens to this. My boss was grumbling in a very masculine way, and he was like, "I don't want to watch this movie. Musicals are dumb." And he comes in the next day and he does the morning announcements. He's like, "This is where everyone's working today. This is everyone's position." And he's like, "I have one more announcement. I just have to say, I saw Wicked last night and it changed my life." And then he was asking for musical recommendations from everyone. It was great. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Just
that's
just
beautiful.
speaking about like passing down, stories like this, experiences like Wizard of Oz and Wicked, like it hits
Yeah.
not just for your friends' kids, but also your 33-year-old manager. They might have an experience like this
Exactly.
too.
My one of my BFFs just got introduced to Wicked for the first time because of the movie, and he knew The Wizard of Oz for sure, but was familiar with Wicked, and I think the movie has kind of like propelled him into this. And even though, I mean, as you know, a diehard theater, I'm kind of like, "Ugh, I'm too loyal to the original show. I'm skeptical about the movie. You know what? I don't even care because if it's introducing new people of any age and stage to this universe, to this world, that's fabulous. Come join
Hmm.
us, please. On the other side of the rainbow.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of felt that way with like Les Mis when that came out, the movie, because like I think Les Mis is one of those musicals that kind of passes through and touches a lot more of like the more masculine men in the audience who wouldn't go see musicals otherwise. They kind of connect to something there because it's just about two dudes that hate each other. And so I saw a lot of like guys I know who I go see the superhero movies with and stuff that don't really come out for other things, but they all kind of liked Les Mis, and I didn't think that was a particularly good adaptation of Les Mis. But seeing that it could bring other people into this genre that I care about, I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Anyway, what's our final verdict here for Wizard of Oz, Jason? You sticking with underrated?
This one's really interesting for me. I would say, and as we were talking about it, it's like, because I'm not sure if this is in my top 10 either, but I think this movie is so simple, like you said, and it's kid friendly, like you said, it's inoffensive that it makes a lot of people's top 20 list. And then because of the way averaging works, it gets bumped up higher because one person might have like Fight Club at their number one movie and then 20 other people don't have that movie on their list at all, so this movie gets bumped up higher in the aggregate. So like in that, like I think this is like a 98% movie, like how Rotten Tomatoes has it. I think this is very much like uh perfectly placed, largely because like this is a beloved film for everyone and there's just a lot to like about it. So I'm gonna go, and this is our rare and we don't like doing this, but like this is something I think is properly rated.
I
It's
was gonna ask about that because that's
pro-
kind of how I feel. But
properly
if I have to
rated
pick
is the coward's way out, but
Yeah, it
we're
is.
allowed to do it.
Yeah.
We've made that ruling.
Yeah.
yeah, there's still some magic to it, and I don't know that I can fully place it myself because again, just rewatching it, just it felt so comfortable. It felt like home, but there was still, this level of wonder and magic that even I felt, after so many years and after, having my vision colored by things like Wicked and other stuff like that in the same universe. It's like, oh no, it still holds up somehow. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, even that first reveal into Oz. Actually, do you guys know about how they did that, by the way?
That
The
shot.
fun fact
I,
about the coloring?
I was looking at that shot today, and I was like, "This isn't a very complicated shot at all," because it's just like the wall. It's just like the wall and the door opening. I'm guessing they just colored the door and the wall like a
So
like a
yeah,
like a
they had
muted
a
color.
yeah, so they had a body double and they
Yeah.
like dressed her and or make upped her all in browns, sepia tones, and had her do the
Oh wow.
door, and then Judy Garland stepped past her. But that, I mean, that was purely practical, and I mean, I cannot imagine that reveal in the theaters in 1939. Just yeah, the magic of the color. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
cool.
I'm sure those folks
Really
are easy to
crazy.
impress in the theater. They're like, "Oh my god, it's
Oh,
yellow. That's
whatever.
crazy, bro."
The magic
It's
of movies, though. Come on. I'm savvy. What
it's
can I say?
No, I agree with you. And I think that is like a really cool way to do that shot. But yeah,
Mm.
Dylan, to your point, like people did get scared of trains going towards the screen. So
It's coming. It's coming, Julia.
They would have never survived 4DX.
but to be fair, like we say that about audiences back then, but remember when we watched The Quiet Place together and that monster jumped out and I like jumped all the way back in my seat?
I know that scared the shit out of you.
The jump scares, they still work today.
Real.
It's still stuff on the
Real.
screen that can't hurt you,
Yes.
but
There,
you'll still have a
Yes.
there's
reaction.
a jump scare in Smile 2 that got me in the theater this year. The movie's got a shitload of jump scares, and there was one that just like caught
I
me
can't
off
wait to see
guard.
that.
Yeah.
Smile 2 is a
Oh, I'm
fucking trip.
excited.
I don't want to see it by myself.
But yeah, I think Wizard of Oz. I think it's like a movie that's impossible to judge in a vacuum, which is like kind of the problem with it. It's a movie that has 100% name recognition, and everything is. As soon as you're talking about Wizard of Oz, you're talking about the legacy, and you're talking about how old the film is, and how it did all of these different things, and all the stories behind it. And you're just like never talking about the movie itself. And like, and the movie is
Interesting.
good, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like top 10, top 5 movies of all time good. I think it's solid. It's a solid film. I definitely recommend watching, especially if you've never watched the film from start to finish. It's only like an hour and 40 minutes. It's pretty tight. But yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult one to talk about and judge.
Yeah. So are you going overrated or are you just not giving a rating to this
No,
one?
I'll say it's overrated for sure.
Okay, cool. All right. So we're largely
Even though
sticking to our,
Wicked has a higher letterbox score right now.
all
Wicked
right,
is a
well, that's
4.1.
ridiculous. Although
You know
I
why
gave
Wicked has a 4.1? That is some MCU echo chamber shit.
Yeah, I
Is
know.
that people watching Wicked are the people that are gonna like Wicked. They're not going there to write up their critical
Yeah,
response to the film.
true. Especially since it's so long. I love a long movie. Listen, I'm one of the only people I know. Like, give me a 3.5 hour movie. I don't care. I love it. But like sometimes it does not need to be as long as it is. But it doesn't feel its length. I was impressed.
I agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think some of the dance sequences go on a little long, but when your chair is moving, it's like you're a part of it, so it's all good. Oh
So
yeah, that's the other thing I'm gonna plug. Let's go into plugs. I'm gonna plug the 4DX experience that you can do at Regal Cinemas. So
this is an
not
AMC podcast, Jason.
I know, but
Not sponsored.
AMC doesn't have.
But AMC, if you're listening,
Yeah, obviously we plug AMC A-List every day. Get $25 a month, see 3 movies a
Such
week.
a good
It's the
deal.
best deal you can get. And then when you do buy regular movie tickets for your friends and stuff, you get AMC points that you can use to redeem snacks. So you buy the movie tickets for your friends, have them Venmo you, pay you back, and then you get all those points to buy snacks.
So many points.
Is genius. But if you do have a Regal near you that has a 4DX theater, you got to do it because they program the seats to move with the choreography of Wicked. So it's like you're dancing on the screen with the characters, and then you're defying gravity with Elphaba. It's awesome.
Let me tell you one thing to not do in the 4DX experience, though, is do not sing along with the songs in the theater, okay? I saw Cynthia Erivo like tweeted like, "Hey guys, make sure you sing during the songs in the theater." And I wanted to be like, "Shut the fuck up! Are you kidding me?" No, absolutely not. Can we do a ruling on this?
Did you
that is-
hear? I heard
Do not do that.
I heard they're releasing sing-alongs on Christmas Day. I haven't verified this, but I heard they're doing that. I'm like, honestly, that's for the best because then if you want to, you can. I might have to go do that.
Exactly.
But
Give
not
them
in
their own space.
theater.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
perfect
we need
solution.
that. We need that.
Yeah.
So
Hannah, do you have
fun.
anything to plug?
Oh, I don't know that I do. I'm thrilled that Wicked impressed me as much as it did, and I'm thrilled to be revisiting an old childhood fave in The Wizard of Oz, and I might have to read the original stories now. I'm kind of thinking about it, so I'll just plug that. I'll just plug the OG Wizard of Oz. There you go.
It's a good one. And
If you're listening to this
that's
episode, you
free. You can
should
just
already
read that.
know.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great.
Dylan, do you have anything to plug?
Check out the Universal Sphere. here in
Yeah,
Philadelphia.
that's right.
Going there tomorrow night.
yeah.
I'm very excited.
All right, cool. Well, that's going to
Awesome.
do it for our podcast then. Be sure to check us out on Patreon where you can donate us some money so that we can continue doing this podcast. It pays for things like letting us be able to talk to our friends who don't live close to us. And that's more expensive than I thought when I checked the bill. So yeah, donate to us if you want. We have different tiers. You can get your name in the credits of our YouTube videos. You can get episodes released to you a day early. Check us out on Discord. Join our Discord so you can have conversations like this with us directly. We release we have a bot that shows all our Letterboxd reviews right on the Discord. So sometimes I'll review something and someone will say, I agree with that, or I don't. And that can launch a fun conversation. You can also suggest ideas for future episodes on there. As always, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, and then you can watch us on YouTube. But that's going to be it for today's episode of the Over Under Podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you at the movies. Bye.
Later.
Bye.